Palante is kind of based around the work of the Young Lords. So they were a group of incredible, like, young Puerto Ricans in New York and Chicago who organized to fight for the needs of their community.
I mean, I think the Young Lords for me represent community, taking care of community. But I think that they were about independence, and I think they were about self-governing. And so I think those are the important pieces, self-determination, and I think those are the important pieces that I sort of relate to Palante Restorative Justice Program in Holyoke as that.
So we call ourselves Palante Restorative Justice, but we believe that the work that we do is actually transformative justice. We don't want to restore things back to the way they were. We don't want to put a bandage over the wounds that were created from these systemic issues, but we rather want to get into the root of the problem and kind of transform the systems that created them in the first place.
Holyoke has a history of being prejudiced and kind of subliminally racist towards minority groups, and it's still really prominent today.
Holyoke was a city rich in its industry. Back in the day, we're known as the Paper City. It was a city of promise, and it's a city rich in its culture. A lot of people have found their home here in Holyoke. Before it was mainly Latino population, which it is today. It was a lot of Irish population, a huge Irish population, and they fought their own oppressions.
And so there's always been an immigrating group to come into the city of Holyoke, work, progress, and move up the hill. But by the time that Puerto Ricans came into Holyoke, and the largest wave was in the 70s, those jobs were gone. What we have today is sort of a post-industrial city and a struggling urban area. Poverty is very condensed, and it's in a very particular area. That's why some people would say it's the tale of two cities, which is where you have workers living in the downtown area, and as people socially and economically progress and politically, they move up the hill.
And then you can see where, here you have these really new cobblestone streets. And then, what do we have on this side?
Yep.
Right? Just old street, not real sidewalks. People talking a lot now about, improving Holyoke, rebranding Holyoke, making it new. But again, if that's true, shouldn't that be for every neighborhood?
There's a lot of beauty in the struggle of what people have gone through here in Holyoke. And it's very rich in that history and its culture there.
I believe the strengths in Holyoke is how proud we are of our culture and how we really represent it on our shirts, our cars. There's parades, there's a Puerto Rican parade, and there's also the Irish parade. And a challenge is sometimes the cultures clash a lot.
I know for a fact that all the different varieties of people in this school do not get along because of culture differences and difference of opinions.
The students are here every day experiencing these various types of injustice, being surveyed in the school, being treated differently by their teachers, being excluded from having access to things like support to go to college and things like that. That one of the things that Palante seeks to do is to address that from within the very setting that where students are located on the day-to-day.
There's a stereotype that we're not going to progress, we're not going to do much in our lives. We're just expected to kind of come to school, not really care, slack off, just occupy space essentially, and end up with getting pregnant by a guy here. That's our story. That's every young woman who's a person of color in Holyoke. That's how the teachers see us, especially I think being that most of our teachers are white. That's kind of they look down on us, especially not even only as students, but as people too.
Holyoke has a whole program called the Care Center, which is a school for teen moms. right? So that should talk about what the social expectation of young women of color is.
A student of color may get disciplined at a magnitude that is higher than if they committed the same infraction that a white student committed, right? So there's a lot of inequities in the way we're treating students based on what they look like or what language they speak or what school they come from. And I think this program has allowed us to have some difficult conversations about privilege and race and inequity.
Holyoke Public Schools were 4th in the country for the suspension rate of Latino students. So Holyoke is a city of like 40,000 people. Don't quote me on that. It's a pretty small city. It shouldn't really be on the map nationally.
Us at Holyoke High as a community have all been considered ground zero for school to prison pipeline in Massachusetts alone for many years.
The school to prison pipeline is a system set up against people of color. It pushes them out of high school, pushes them to drop out, or it just like has them expelled, which ends up making them lead to the streets for money, education, I would say, and just to better themselves or their family. And this ends up leading into the prison system.
There's no such thing as bad students at all. It's just circumstances of life that led their mindset change a little bit, and now that's why they act the way they act. But that all happens because of what happened in their community, in their background, in their house. So like if we change our community and we give them an outlet like Palante to help them solve their problems, help them in those households where like abuse is seen, in those households where like hunger is seen, where like you gotta grind to take your family out, the struggle, like stuff like that. It's just Palante can help with.
I was seeing students as an individual therapist and just feeling frustrated about the like systemic problems and issues that were impacting their lives that I had no control over. I was interested in restorative justice and basically reached out to some other folks in the building who I thought might be interested and, ask the principal, would it be okay if we put together like a little study group to just look at alternatives ways of doing discipline. Again, kind of expand. We had that small group of like 5 people who were talking about it. We got 17 teachers interested. We're able to put them through a couple of trainings, and then we met every other week to do readings, watch videos, and learn about restorative practices and how we might think about how we might be able to implement it here.
We use the circle practice, which has Native American origins to it. And when we are in circle, that just makes sure that everyone has an equal opportunity to speak.
The idea of circle practice is that we're all kind of just continuous flow of energy, and everybody has that chance, because to get to one end, you can't just cut across a circle. You have to pass it around, and everybody just has that opportunity. And with the talking piece specifically, everybody has the ability to, and even if they don't want to, that's respected as well.
We have support circles, we have conflict circles. We're basically here for everyone. You have a few peer leaders, and then you have the person that needs support. You could either bring in your parent, or you could have a friend, like a trusted friend within the school.
I believe that Palante is needed in the community, the Holyoke community, because it helps a lot of the families it kind of reaches out to the students. Students reach out to their families. They can bring families into the Holyoke High School community, come to circles. They come to whenever Palante is giving an info, and we're just talking about Palante, what we do, how we help their students, how we're keeping them in school, how we're making sure that they don't go to prison, how we're just interrupting this system that's just set up against them.
Palante provides pretty much a shoulder for a lot of the students and a lot of help to students. So also if students aren't on track with their grades, Palante could help them with their grades and get them back on track and provide them with almost like a structure so they could get back on track and do what they gotta do.
It's revolutionary, it's transformative, so interrupting the school to prison pipeline, which Holyoke has been a big feeder to. And so for me, that's what Palante represents. It's just students having self-determination, students being leaders, students being revolutionary and transformative.
What I like most about the program is the fact that it's really student-led and student-driven. So the values of the program aren't something that is from the top down, like adults telling young people that this is the program, these are the values, this is the work we should be doing, but like from the bottom up, the students themselves, based on personal experiences with the school system, with teachers, with educators, turning that frustration into energy in a program that has now made a really substantial difference in the way that issues and conflicts are handled at the high schools.
And I've had students tell me that the first time they felt like a leader was when they joined Palante. And we've got to replicate that experience in other places in the school because look at the impact it's made on the performance of those students.
I think first, one of the main things that my research has found is that it creates space for students to develop and build off of an understanding, love, and appreciation for their cultural identities and multiple identities, so ethnic, racial, youth culture. I think schools aren't always a place that honor who students are and what they know and where they come from and who their people are. And so one of the things is restorative justice, the way that we practice it, creates a real space to develop that appreciation.
But I think what restorative justice does is it really does, it's like water eroding away the hardness, the hard structure that tries to get inside of us. And the more that we create places in schools where we get to be our full human beings connecting with each other, the more that our world is gonna change. Like it's like that long-term work of change. If we trust that the restorative justice process gets at the root of things in a way that actually resolves things and doesn't just make them go away, but creates repair and creates more harmony than there was before, then it's worth the time. The time is a worthy investment in that project.
Schools have to be looking at how racism, sexism, how power plays out and how injustice operates, because if you only address sort of the interpersonal stuff, you won't be addressing everything that needs to be addressed. And that if you're not, then you're not doing restorative or transformative justice, because you're not doing justice.
After joining this program, I became responsible. I've stepped up my schoolwork. I would have never thought I would go into college.
But they made sure that I kept on track of always having good grades, make sure I attended school. There was also trauma my freshman year from my mom's medical issue. So they helped me with that. They were a listening ear if I couldn't go to someone in my family. They were always there. They're like my second family. They've brought me a lot of happiness. They've also made me more outgoing as a person. And also now I can see myself as a leader.